Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today's story is one you definitely don't want to miss. It's packed with emotions, confusion, and a twist that'll leave you speechless. Just when it seemed like things were finally starting to fall into place between Trin and Han, someone unexpected shows up, and not just anyone. Who is this mysterious stranger? Why did they appear right when Trin was about to do something special for Han? And more importantly, what did Diệu Hân see that made her freeze her heart? Racing her face, locked in pure shock. Stick around because we're about to dive deep into the moment everything changed. We're uncovering the truth behind it all, and trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next. The air was thick with anticipation as Trin stood in the small yard, his hands covered in sawdust, preparing to build something special. The wooden beams before him, freshly cut and ready, weren't just a part of his task for the day, they were his attempt to show Han how much he cared. The fence that would separate her from the world outside was meant to be more than a physical barrier. It was meant to be a gesture, a small yet meaningful offering to someone who had become more significant in his life than he had ever imagined. However, as he carefully measured the wood, adjusting each piece with precision, he didn't anticipate the complication that was about to walk into his life. The feeling of another presence didn't escape him as he worked, but he thought little of it at first. That was until he heard the sound of a motorbike pulling up the sharp hum of its engine, cutting through the stillness of the afternoon. It was a sound that distracted him, making him glance over his shoulder. There, standing at the edge of the driveway, was a person he didn't recognize. The tall, well-groomed figure carried himself with an unusual flair, the kind of confidence that made him hard to ignore. The stranger wore an air of entitlement, one that suggested he was no stranger to attention. Yet his eyes held a trace of uncertainty, like someone who didn't quite fit in. Though had arrived, Trin squinted, wiping the sweat from his brow, as he stood up trying to piece together the situation. "Can I help you?" He called out, cautious but polite, his voice still hoarse from the heat of the sun. Though standing tall didn't seem intimidated. Instead, he flashed a smile that was almost too smooth, a gesture that seemed rehearsed, yet effortless. "I'm Trin," he said a little too brightly for Trin's liking. The strange name rolled off his tongue like a warning, but Trin didn't know how to react. His mind was focused on the work at hand, yet something about the way Trin stood there, his posture, his gaze, made Trin uneasy. Was he a friend of Han's? Had she been expecting him? Before Trin could even get a word out, Trin took the liberty of guiding him to the shade of the tree, not giving him the chance to refuse. The strange man's fingers brushed Trin's arm lightly, too familiar for someone he had just met. Trin froze, the unexpected touch sending a jolt through him that he tried to ignore. He didn't want to be rude, but everything about Trin's demeanor felt wrong. As Trin fanned him with exaggerated motions, Trin felt more like a spectacle than a person. The breeze barely offered relief from the heat, but still Trin made no effort to let go. "You really should take better care of yourself," Trin whispered with a soft, almost patronizing tone. Trin stiffened, feeling every inch of the awkwardness growing between them. "I'm fine," he muttered, trying to dismiss the discomfort that was slowly gnawing at him. What was going on here? Why was this person acting like this? At that moment, Han turned the corner. Her gaze landed on the scene before her, and in an instant, everything shifted. Her eyes widened in confusion, a flush creeping across her cheeks as she stood still, caught between disbelief and the instinct to understand what she was seeing. Under the tree, Trin was standing, his face slightly flushed and his posture stiff, while the stranger Trin held his hand and smoothed his hair like they were an established couple. It was an image that seemed to belong to a romantic drama, one that Han never expected to witness. Her heart skipped a beat. Could this be real? Was it possible that Trin, the man she had begun to grow so close to, was, well, what was the word? Gay Han felt the suspicion bloom inside her chest, like a cold wave, a mixture of surprise, disappointment, and something she couldn't quite place. She took a step back, her heart racing, as she processed the scene unfolding before her. It didn't make sense, and yet, there it was. Without thinking, she muttered under her breath as she quickly turned and walked away, trying to keep her composure. "Hello. I was just passing through," she said, her voice soft but strained, not looking back at the two men. She didn't want to make a scene, but her mind was racing. She needed to get out of there. Trin's heart raced as he saw her retreating form. "Han, wait. It's not what you think," he called out, urgency coating his voice. He tried to run after her, but before he could even take a few steps, Trin stepped in his path, blocking his way. Though grinned, crossing his arms over his chest. "Well, well," he said, his voice dripping with mischief. "What's the rush, Thin? You don't have to hide it. I get it. It's fine, really." Trin stopped in his tracks, his breath coming faster as he tried to keep control of the situation. "No, it's not like that," he blurted out. "I don't even know this guy that well." But it was too late. The damage had been done. Han had already seen too much, and the questions swirled in her mind faster than she could process them. The confusion lingered in the air like an unspoken tension, heavy and uncomfortable, as Trin stood frozen, desperately trying to untangle the mess that had just been created. Han had already walked off, leaving him in a whirlwind of uncertainty and guilt. His heart pounded in his chest, his thoughts spiraling, unsure how to fix what had just happened. But there was no time to dwell on that. Trin couldn't help but wonder what Tho was even doing here. The timing couldn't have been worse. He had just started to build a small bond with Han, something that had started to feel significant, only to have this stranger show up and throw everything off balance. The worst part was that Trin didn't even know why he was here. Was he a friend of Han's? Someone from her past? Or was there something more to his appearance than met the eye? As Tho walked toward him with an exaggerated confidence, Trin instinctively took a step back, trying to put some distance between them. "You know I've been waiting for you forever," Tho said loud enough for Han to hear from a distance. His tone was playful, but it carried an edge of something more, something possessive, like he had every right to be here. His palm landed with a loud smack on Trin's backside, and Trin flinched, his whole body stiffening at the unexpected contact. It was as though Tho enjoyed causing discomfort, relishing in the control he seemed to have over the situation. The way he looked at Trin, as though the two of them shared some secret, some private joke that no one else understood, made Trin's skin crawl. "I don't even know this guy that well," Trin blurted out, his voice rising in frustration as he spun around to face Han. "Oh, come on. You don't have to hide it," Tho teased. This was beyond awkward. It was bordering on absurd. Tan could feel his face turning red from the combination of embarrassment and anger. It felt like a slap in the face, as if that wasn't enough. Just as Tan turned to walk away, trying to distance himself from the uncomfortable situation, Tho called after him, his voice loud and unyielding. "Hey, don't walk away now, Tan. We're not done here." And then, as if to punctuate the tension, Tho turned his attention back to Han, his expression hardening into something that was no longer playful, but sharp, possessive almost. "Just so you know," Tho said, his voice lowering in a way that made it clear he meant every word. "I'm in love with Than. He's mine. So don't get any ideas." Han's eyes widened in genuine confusion, her brow furrowing as she tried to make sense of this declaration. "Wait, what, you and Than?" she asked, her voice tinged with disbelief. "But you just came up from Saigon. How do you even know him?" The words hung in the air, thick with misunderstanding and tension. Tho didn't answer immediately. Instead, he gave Han a pointed look, a gaze that was both dismissive and slightly threatening. "That's enough questions." He snapped, his tone sharp. "Geez, you talk too much." The atmosphere around them shifted, the energy growing uncomfortable, leaving no space for Han's curiosity to flourish. There was a sense of finality in those words, as though he was trying to control the narrative. But Han, still processing everything she had witnessed, couldn't help but feel her curiosity spike further. Though ever the showman reached into his bag and pulled out a dress, its thin plastic wrapping crinkling in the sudden silence. "Here," he said, tossing the dress at Han. "My mom bought this for you." Han blinked, completely thrown off by the unexpected gesture. "Your mom bought me a dress?" she asked incredulously. Tho waved his hand dismissively, as if it didn't matter. "She buys all sorts of junk," he said nonchalantly. "But don't get excited. Just put it on so I can take a picture for her. She wants proof." Han hesitated, her fingers brushing the fabric of the dress. I don't really wear dresses," she admitted quietly, trying to make sense of everything that had just happened. Tho rolled his eyes. "Yeah, that explains the whole farm girl vibe. Whatever. Just put it on. We'll make it quick." And so, reluctantly, Han turned and went inside, the weight of the situation hanging over her. She didn't want to seem ungrateful, but everything about this moment felt off. She slipped the dress on, wondering where it all was leading and if she'd ever get the answers she needed. As Han stepped outside, the world seemed to hold its breath. The sunlight hit her dress just right. It shimmered soft and graceful. For someone who swore she never wore dresses, Han looked effortlessly stunning. "All right," Tho said, his eyes glinting with something hard to read. "Spin for me." With a slow, almost reluctant motion, she twirled. Tho didn't waste a second. He pulled out his phone, snapping photos in rapid succession. Click, click, click. No asking, no pause, just the sound of the camera capturing her over and over. And then just as quickly, his voice shifted. "Okay, that's enough. Now take it off. We're done." Han froze. "What?" "Take it off," he repeated, his tone flat. "I need to return it." For a moment, she just stood there, confusion and hesitation washing over her. Slowly, she nodded, retreating inside to slip out of the dress and fold it as neatly as possible. There was something in her gut that didn't sit right. Something wasn't about the dress at all. It was more than that. It was about control, about hiding something. Back on the porch, Tho stuffed the dress into his bag, not a word between them. And just like that, The silence wasn't awkward. It was heavy, ominous. Deep down, Han couldn't shake the feeling that maybe, just maybe, you were starting to think what she was. Maybe Tho wasn't really in love with Than. Maybe he was just trying to keep his true self hidden, and that dress, it wasn't for her. It was a statement. To someone. To anyone. His mother, perhaps? Or even himself. But that wasn't the only question on Han's mind. Where had Than gone? Why did he leave so suddenly? And more importantly, would he ever come back? The misunderstanding between them had left a crack. Whether it would turn into a rift or simply fade away, well, that was still to be seen. And for now, that's where their story leaves us. One dress, one lie, one moment that shifted everything. Will Than find the courage to speak up? Will Han finally figure out what she truly wants and who she can trust? And will Tho ever confront the truth about himself? Stick around because next episode, everything's about to break wide open.
Ở đó dưới gốc cây, trong tư thế chỉ có thể được mô tả và thân mật một cách đáng ngờ, Thành bối rối, mặt hơi đỏ mặt. Bên cạnh anh, một người dại nhẹ nhàng nắm tay anh, vuốt tóc anh như một thể trong phim tình cảm lãng mạn. Từ xa, mắt Hân nheo lại, biểu cảm của cô chuyển từ bối rối sang sự hoài nghi lặng lẽ. Cách Trinh nhẹ nhàng chạm vào cánh tay Thành, giọng điệu quá quen thuộc. Cách Thành đứng im như không biết phải làm gì. Tất cả đã vẽ nên một bức tranh mà cô không ngờ tới. Đợi đã, Thành có phải là gay không? Ý nghĩ đó ập đến với cô như một cơn gió lạnh mùa hè. Cô bước lùi lại, trái tim hơi bối rối trong sự ngạc nhiên, thất vọng và tò mò ngượng ngùng. Trong khi đó, Thành vẫn ở dưới gốc cây, thậm chí còn không nhận ra cô quay lại. Anh quá bận rộn, cố gắng thoát khỏi tình cảm bất ngờ của Trinh mà không tỏ ra thô lỗ. Nhưng điều gì sẽ xảy ra khi anh phát hiện ra những gì Hân đã nhìn thấy? Và những gì cô nghĩ, anh có thể giải thích không? Liệu cô có tin anh không? Có một điều chắc chắn, Thành không hề biết sự hiểu lầm vừa mới bắt đầu và nó có thể thay đổi mọi thứ như thế nào. Hãy theo dõi phần tiếp theo.